Next episode is called Eternal Songs. Bye. That's it. Who needs Celia? Give Welcome to the Macross Delta Recap Show, episode 18. This is EXO, along with our mecha expert, whose rune is dark because our magical girl is not here. Chad.
Hello, everybody.
Chad, no Celia. What's going on?
It's going to be brutal. I don't know if we'll be able to get through it. We're going to try our
Oh,
best,
man.
though.
Yeah, we actually got some verbal notes from Celia, so we'll be sneaking those in during the show while me and Chad try to take the whole show up.
Well, why don't we let everybody know, that Celia's in vacation in Japan right now. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why she's not with us. So yeah, just so that everybody knows. But we'll try our best to include her in the episode and get some discussion going here. I think we can handle it. We're big boys. We're all grown up.
So far I've only been to Osaka Airport and Tokushima City. So I haven't seen a lot of Macross stuff yet, but I know the more time I spend out and about that I'm probably going to see more of it. Like one of my friends already told me that she saw the Macross Delta like wafer cookies and the little Macross Delta section at the Animate store. So I'll definitely be hitting that up. And I'll be in Kyoto in like 2 days. And the Macross Delta pop-up shop is there right now. And see what kind of stuff they have there also. But in the meantime, we're going to explore Osaka and do some fun stuff. It's going to be great.
So, episode 18, Sense Emergence. All right, so the reporting that the structure of the main shaft is affecting the core and influencing the weather on Voldor. That's why there's so much rain during the beginning of this episode. I'm not sure if it lasts the whole episode. The plan is once they reach the most inner confines of the structure, that's when Walkure will sing and start their experiment with the horticulture ruins. Lorazabal alerts everybody that the Windermerians just defolded from space.
It was good. I mean, it's obviously a direct jumping off point of where we last left off in the previous episode, where they were launched in their shuttle and their mecha and everything like that towards the planet. Basically, they've already landed and done whatever setup needed to be done before they got going. But yeah, it's just a little bit of a sort of like a sullen opening. It's kind of like a little bit of a darker tone for the rest of the episode, I think.
Yeah, and Kaname is paired off with Arid. Do you kind of feel like there's a connection between them? We're all not shipping, but we're all wondering if there's going to be some sort of ship between them.
There's definitely something there, yeah, and I don't think they've developed anything. They're just still keeping that thread going. Like by them, I mean the writers. They're still like letting that continue to be a thing, not much of anything, but they're not willing to just let it go. And in the early part of the series, the writers had characters like Machina, who loves to gossip, and she would like talk about, the fact that, I think there's something between Kaname and Arad, they're always together and they're doing stuff and, that sort of thing. So that kind of like, that also helped the perception that there was something going on there, right? And they'll do other things too, like they'll have the two characters not saying anything, and then one will glance at the other, and then the other one will catch that they're glancing at them. And it's
Yeah.
it's a very brief moment and nobody will say anything. Whether or not the show runners actually do anything with this or it actually goes anywhere, I don't know, but they're definitely keeping their options open.
Later on this episode, she's asking him about secrets, and he's kind of like brushing them off and saying something along the lines of everybody has skeletons in their closet. It's basically along the line of why he kept it from Hayate.
Well, it starts out with a conversation between the two of them about like Kaname asks,
Why did you
why
pair
did you
these
pair
guys
the
up?
two of them up? Meaning the two of them,
Yeah.
meaning Freya and Hayate, like
Yeah.
knowing what he knows about Hayate and knowing what he knows about Freya, right? So Kaname was kind of questioning what I guess Arad's motives were. And I think his motives, like he pretty much is of the opinion that like they need them. I think that's why Arad never really wanted to consider Hayate's past or any sort of difficulties between him and Freya or like even any romantic entanglements. I think Arad was more concerned with the fact that, you know what, these two kids can sync up, and when they sync up, it is like extraordinary, and we need something extraordinary in this team, meaning like the Delta Squadron, right? So he saw them as an asset and was willing to just put them together, ignore all other considerations and just go with it and see if he could get the two of them to work and to produce like the kind of performance that he needed out of them, especially in a military sense. I think that is his true motivation. I don't think it's necessarily panning out to be such a good policy. It's clear that things didn't work out exactly as smoothly as he wanted. Relationships are strained right now between the various members of Delta Squadrons. I don't think it's ultimately a plan that worked flawlessly as Arad would have liked, but at least Freya and Hayate are together and they're obviously performing, right? So
Nothing ever comes out like Aaron hopes, anyways, because he's just way too much of an optimist, right?
yeah.
He's just hoping everything works out.
The writers use Arid to sort of dole out like necessary exposition and to move certain plot points ahead, even at the expense of his character. Because there's not much going on there as far as character development. He's kind of a flat character, right? But I think they're using him for like plot expediency. You know, just to get things moving along and for him to interject necessary information to get to those plot points when necessary.
Yeah, that's the one thing that they're really good at with this show. And I think it's also a negative because they wait until that moment where they do round off characters when it's necessary, when they could have just been doing it little by little along the way. I was surprised that Konami didn't know about the right Immelman's secret because last episode he looked at her and he said, well, he's going to find out anyways. And seemingly like she knew also. But we find out this episode that she had no idea either what he was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when she calls him out on it, he's kind of like, well, you know, every rug has like a few secrets swept beneath it or something like that, he says. I
Hmm.
don't know if that's accurate. That's just in the fan subs. I don't know if that's accurate to what he actually
Yeah.
says, but yeah, he's using again, he's being very arid like he's using, you know, this sort of metaphor and analogy and everything else just to say something vague instead of actually answering like with direct like on point and facts and everything else.
Who's more mysterious, him or Mikumo?
I don't think he's very mysterious because I think his just like I said, he's being doled out in portions, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Mikumo is like, yes, she's been played mysterious from the beginning, and we never find out anything about her until we get to like the much later episodes, like the last one, where we
Yeah.
finally start to learn something about her. We finally get the pieces that are starting to maybe they will come together into something. She's been like cryptic, like outright
Yeah.
cryptic. This isn't like a withholding of information or anything like that. She's like a, you know, she's like a Ben Kenobi or Yoda figure, you know, giving out these little soliloquies and, you know, and pieces of trivia here and there in like wrapped up in poetry so that they don't really make much sense. You have to figure it out with your subconscious rather than your conscious mind, right? The mystery stuff didn't really work for me because I think it's a little like a little overplayed maybe. Like it's been a bit too heavy-handed without enough
Overplayed. Yeah.
yeah,
Too
overplayed.
many
Yes. Too
episodes.
many episodes of mystery, not enough episodes of anything coming of it.
I think that's starting to change. I actually put out a tweet last night where it's a shot of her and then she's saying that line, look, it's not my nature to be mysterious, but I can't talk about it and I can't talk about why, Ocean's 12.
Yes, yeah.
Let's talk about that really quick. Mirage was kind of like looking at her and Kim was like, what? And Mirage is like, oh, I'm kind of surprised that you didn't run off. She actually just went, yeah, right.
Well,
But she didn't
she
really answer.
agreed. Like she was like, "Yeah, isn't that strange?" You know, it's
Yeah.
just like again, you know, it's just being the Mikumo being so Mikumo. You know, it's ridiculous. It's like she's mysterious when she like dives off from the group and just disappears, and then she's
uh,
mysterious even when she stays with the group and doesn't say anything.
I'm surprised Mirage didn't just roll her eyes. That would have been awesome if they
No,
put it that in.
if this were, I think you can only get away with something like that in anime. I think in like live action, it would be almost impossible for an actor not to roll their eyes at a response like that.
Yeah. So right after the opening is Royd kind of like assigning the duties for the nights. Keith is asking, does Hines know about this experiment? Royd, of course, is like, yeah, I've been given full authority for the matter. That's what he says. I don't know if I don't think Keith was happy about that answer.
No, clearly not. But this is. I must admit that as a viewer, I'm kind of having fun with it because Keith was just like he was so successful in the early part of Macross Delta and undermining Royd and just like going and doing his own thing and just thumbing his nose at Royd's authority. Because it was just like he had Gramia on his side, he had Heinz in his pocket, and he was like the golden boy who could do no wrong, right? He was like
Yeah.
undefeated in battle and he would scare the crap out of Delta Squadron every time he appeared and everything. It just, everything seemed to be going his way. And now, post Gramia's death and the coronation of Heinz, he's like separated from Heinz most of the time and doesn't get to see him or do anything with him. And Royd has been made the heir apparent. And Royd has already publicly made his grand gesture in that he's going forward with an invasion of the entire new unified government across the galaxy, which is something way beyond what everybody else had planned for the Windermerian war that they waged, right? They just wanted the Bersinger cluster. So Royd is really now just in full command and just doesn't worry about anything from anybody, especially Keith. And you can tell that in this scene. He's just adjusting his glasses calmly and he's got this nonchalant sort of look on his face. And he's like, dude, I've been given full broad discretionary power, man. I'm doing this all. This is me, man. And like Keith just has no recourse. He can just sit there and mope. That's it. He doesn't have any way to like circumvent Royd like he did before. And so yeah, I assume that that's really got to be starting to grate on Keith. I'm not sure what will come of it. I'm not sure if he will eventually take some action or whatnot, or if he even can. But
Mhm.
yeah, the tables have definitely been turned. Royd is pretty much holding all the cards at this point.
Yeah, the tables have turned, and it's interesting that you mentioned the separation because we see something manifest. There's a certain separation between Keith and the rest of the knights, and it shows up later on. But let's move on to the next scene where Roy assigns Keith and the twins up in the skies, and Cossum, Herman, and Bogue are down in the grounds. Bogue is annoyed with Cossum. He's like, "What's up with you?" And Cossum's kind of uneasy, and he's like, "Should we be activating this unknown system on an inhabited planet?" And Bogue says that once you disobey your king, then you're no longer a knight, which makes Qasim walk away, and Herman kind of looks disappointed.
It's a little strange, actually. I'm not really sure I understand why Qasim is so taken aback by what Bogue says. I mean, Qasim is also like a more experienced and older fighter, and it seems weird that he would be so emotionally compromised by what basically comes out of Bogue's mouth as an impudent little jerk comment. I'm not really sure why he was so upset about the fact his knighthood was being questioned just because he's seen, a little bit of Royd's shenanigans, I guess you could call them, or manipulations or whatever, like his motives and what he's doing with the war and everything else like that. And it's just clearly, even talking to Bogue or any of the younger knights is not really that fruitful because you kind of have to appeal to them in a way that you're not used to doing because they're on board with Royd. Like Bogue and the twins have been established in previous episodes that they are Royd devotees. They think he's great, and it's only the older knights who are like wiser and more experienced who are like looking at Royd and thinking this whole thing, going beyond the Bersinger cluster, declaring war across the whole galaxy against the new unified government and stuff. This is pretty crazy. This is not what everybody signed on for. They're all surprised and they don't know if this is truly the last will and testament of Gramia. I'm pretty sure that the audience suspects it is not, right? I don't know about you. Like, what do you think? Do you think that Royd's telling the truth, or do you think that this is his own agenda when it comes to the broader war?
It's definitely Royd's agenda, but Qasim is being uneasy because, first of all, like we were talking about last week, I think Celia and I were in agreement about Herman planting a seed into Qasim's head about should he agree or not with this whole galaxy-wide war that the Windermerians are basically
Oh,
chasing.
yes, yeah, yeah. And I wasn't sure if I was completely in agreement with you guys on that. That maybe
Yeah.
that's why I'm looking at this from a different angle. Okay.
So at this point, Qasim is being bothered by the fact that he is starting to doubt the direction that Royd is taking. And it is the will of the king, according to Royd. The fact that he's doubting it And then Bogue brings up the fact that you're not a knight if you don't follow the king's will. Like, is there any truth to that? And it does bother him because later on, that's the conversation that he has with Freya. Actually, we could go right into that because we already discussed the Aradin economy scene. So we could go right into where Qasim captures Freya and they end up kind of like bonding over the apples. And Hayate ends up joining them because they both get caught.
Well, I don't know. Like, maybe it is making more and more sense as time goes on that what you and Cecilia talked about with what's going on with Cosm and that Herman is sort of like, I guess, manipulating him. I'm not sure.
I don't know about manipulation, but there's an opening when Qasim says that I'm just waiting for this war to be over. He was counting on the fact that when they take over the Brissinger cluster, that they would all go home. And the fact
Yes,
that
yeah.
it becomes a wider waged war, now it's like, well, do I still believe in this?
No, I think that's true. I think that's definitely true, and I think that's at least my interpretation of it is that he is like he is one of the people, I guess, who has a little bit more investment in the fact that this conflict was already supposed to be over. So
Yeah.
I think in addition to just like being older and wiser, like Keith and Herman clearly aren't on board with what Royd is doing either. They have their own reservations. But I guess for Cosm, it's like a little bit more personal because he had an investment in getting back to his orchards and doing his thing. That's what he wants to do with his life, I guess, is to be amongst his apples and to be growing his crops and everything. And he was hoping that once this conflict was over with the Bersinger cluster, it would be just that, and it hasn't turned out that way. So it kind of makes sense, maybe, I guess, that he is one of the more prominent voices of dissent amongst the group, at least at the start. And yeah, so I guess that's kind of what's happening here.
The interaction with Freya and Cossum actually was one of my favorite sequences because I love how like Freya just decides to follow the smell of roasting apples and is like, "Oh my god," and shows up in the enemy camp and totally forgets why she's on the planet in the first place. But instead of turning her in, she and Quasim bond over the fact that their families knew each other, or at least they were familiar with both of the farming families that they come from. And what was great was when Qasim's like country bumpkin accent started to come out the longer he was talking to Freya, and I thought that was a really nice character piece.
Yeah, they realize they're from like the same area on Windermere or something. They live in the same valley and they've got like a hill or something like that that they both know, and they both know that this other guy who lives there, an older guy or something.
Yeah, the leader of Freya's town. The conversation turns towards like why are you spending time with the enemy, and but well, basically Hayate says something like life is short and you should be spending it with somebody that you want to spend it with together. And then that's the first time I think Freya's rune lights up since the last episode where it was just like a bad episode for Hayate. Towards the end, Qasim tells him his name, and then he hears what Hayate's last name is, and he kind of like has a weird reaction.
Oh yeah. So it's clear that Qasim, also knows of, Right Immelman because he has a reaction to Hayate's last name. He repeats Hayate's last name at the end of the conversation. And this is actually what I was fearful of a couple episodes ago when we discussed like the idea of like Hayate learning about what Wright Immelman, his father, has done. And I was worried that one of the other members of either the Aerial Knights or Royd himself would be able to reveal to Hayate the nature of who Wright Immelman was and what he did as some sort of like way to mess with him. And yeah, so this is kind of like that thing where, yeah, okay, we can see here that Qasim knows about Wright Immelman. It's a good thing that Hayate did learn about it before then, because this is a situation where, Qasim could have used that information against, Hayate. It's good that it didn't turn out that way. Like I said, I was pretty opposed to that. I thought it would have been just a little bit too cliche.
There still is a chance that what you're saying could be true because Qasim knows the name and that could still add some kind of information that would add some grief to Hayate's woes.
Maybe, yeah. I guess if we haven't really been told the whole truth yet, maybe, yeah, maybe it could
But
still.
it doesn't seem like he was upset, did it? Like he wasn't overly upset. Oh my God, I have to kill you. You're Imam's son. It wasn't the reaction that I thought it would be.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily anything like that. It was a little bit more somber, I guess.
Yeah.
The correct way to say it.
Yeah, so when they were discussing the whole you shouldn't be spending time with your enemy with Freya, and Freya gets up and she's like, that's not my thing. I'm here to sing, and I want to sing with the people that I want to sing with, and I want to spend my life with the people I want to spend my life with. Yeah, there's just like this strong bond between her and Hayate.
They haven't really played up Mirage's part in this triangle in the last 6 episodes. So it's like, is
Yeah.
she even part of this thing anymore? It's like, is she even in the running? I don't know if that's necessarily intentional or if that's a weakness of the script. I'm not really sure. It's something that I've noticed that a lot of anime, especially Macross, does with its love triangles. It dishes out what it thinks it needs to only at certain points.
Yeah.
Whether we feel as ongoing viewers watching one week after the next, it doesn't really matter. It could they'll leave us hanging if they want to. They'll leave us like in the state we're in now. You know, we have a fan who's said that Mirage is barely there. Like we had all this character work between Hayate and Freya. Where's the character work between Mirage and Hayate? You know,
Yeah.
it's like none of it is there. But then what will happen is that all of a sudden there will be an episode devoted to Mirage and Hayate, like almost out of nowhere, and it will swing the pendulum in a certain direction. We almost get this impression that the love triangle could be over. It's not even a thing. Like Mirage isn't even in the running, and Freya and Hayate are well on their way to, doing something.
Do you think 8 episodes is enough to get her back in there?
One episode is enough. That's the way these shows work. Like, I mean, all it takes is like one episode where they devote it to, this specific relationship, and then all of a sudden things go in another direction.
Yeah, they've been really good with that.
Yeah, there was one episode earlier, like especially with the VF1 sequences and whatnot, where Hayate and Mirage were like bonding just crazy. They
Yeah.
were joking with each other and they were like fighting with each other and they were like helping each other and training with each other and stuff. It definitely moved Mirage forward. And I remember we commented on it at the time. The only problem is like that was a lot of episodes ago and we haven't really had anything like that since. Right. So it feels like everything is, as of episode 18, it feels that like the triangle is very one sided.
It's funny because it's always poor Mirage, and then in the Blu-ray Volume One, there's these little extras where Mirage is just like the butt of the joke for all the videos. They're pretty cute and funny.
I think it might have to do with her character as well. Because
Yeah,
her character's personality is kind of,
she's so
she's so
stiff.
stiff, yeah, and she needs to lighten up a little bit more. But she can be like that's one of the fun things about Mirage's character, and I remember commenting on this in a previous episode of the show, in that she can be incredibly like mischievous and like, downright obnoxious when she wants to be, and that's actually one thing that she has that in common with Hayate, and it doesn't really come out except when she is with Hayate.
Mirage and Mikumo reach their destination, and while Mirage is setting up whatever it is that she's supposed to set up, Mikumo senses something, and she says something like, "Is this fear?" And then next thing you know, she's singing. She's singing Giraffe Blues, and then alarms just go off in the Windermere crafts, and they're like, "There's something going on down there." They ask Royd, who seems like Royd knows what's going on, or maybe he planned all this already, or he's aware of what's going to happen, and he's kind of like, "Let them sing." And then we see like the rest of Walkure running towards where they're supposed to go, and Arid also is like, "Let her sing. We'll just catch up." Beyond this point, everything just goes crazy.
I think Mirage, the equipment that she was setting up, were the scanners and whatnot, and the sensors
Yeah.
to basically track what happens to the protoculture ruins once Valkyrie activates it. So I
Mhm.
think that's all Mirage was doing. And then to the scene, when we talk about Mikumo singing, the fold waves that are happening as a result of this is definitely tied to Belger and the Epsilon Foundation and Royd's study of it, because Belger appears again multiple times in this episode to sort of remind us that the research is ongoing. And I think you're right in that Royd was anticipating that something like this might happen. And I think he was prepared for it if it did, in that he wanted to learn more about the protoculture ruins and the reaction to them, not necessarily from Heinz, but from Walkere. And he does act like he suspected that some reaction like this might have happened. I think it's all tied into that continuing study where we're constantly given that percentage all the time of like how close
Mhm.
they are, how much more they've researched and whatnot. It's almost like a countdown clock, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like once it gets to 100% and they've completely researched the protoculture ruins and they have all these readings and this data and everything else, Royd is going to be able to uncover something or unlock some kind of truth, or some sort of power will be unleashed. and he's going to be the one that's going to try and use it. And I think that might track as well, because in this episode, we're getting a lot of sort of mixed messages about what Mikumo's actually doing,
Hmm.
like with the protoculture ruins. I mean, maybe you had a different interpretation, but I was kind of looking at it and everything that was going on, and she's clearly disrupting some things, but is it for good? Is it for bad? Maybe is it Makumo's intention to do good, but Royd is able to subvert what she's doing into his own purposes? Like, I'm not really sure I understand exactly what's happening in this episode as far as like the effect of Makumo singing on and Walkyrie singing on the protoculture ruins.
Mikumo's awakening was like terrifying. It had some serious Evangelion vibes. Like it reminded me a lot of End of Evangelion with giant like goddess Ray up in the sky, just kind of overarching over everything, and also very Third Impact. Like it reminded me a lot of the Third Impact, or near Third Impact, I should say, from the Rebuild movies, and really big and climactic.
It almost seems like an addiction. Like there's every time she goes into one of those structures or gets near a protoculture ruin, there's almost this sensation and an amount of revelation. She gets this high or some kind of rush. And when she's not around it, it's that's all she could think about. So she could be falling into what Royd is planning. And as far as Royd, I almost feel like he set up the whole thing where the Voldorians are have a resistance and the troops are retreating. So there's like an opening for them to actually go into
Yeah, I
Voldor,
was
which is
thinking, yeah,
exactly
the same thing. Yeah.
yeah. So I think he planned this out a lot better than everybody else knows.
The Windsinger controlling the knights through their runes was also pretty intense and really scary. And I think Royd already knew that was a choice because when it happened, it was like he was anticipating it. And he looked pretty damn pleased with himself when it actually took them over. Kind of like this, like, yes, good type of expression on his face. So clearly he knows more than he's been letting on this whole time. I mean, that seems kind of obvious, but now it's raised even more questions like, what does Royd know and what is he keeping from everybody for his own gain? What was interesting is that it didn't affect Keith. Like all the other knights' runes lit up when they were being controlled, or at least it seemed like they were being controlled by the Wind Song, but not Keith's. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Even if he didn't, he definitely hoped that something like this would happen, and he was prepared for it if it did.
Yeah.
So,
But he knew where to run the experiments, which is over Voldor.
yes.
So coincidence?
Coincidence? No, it's a good theory. I think it definitely makes sense. So, like I said, I think it's like ultimately all that stuff is linked to the Epsilon Foundation and their research for sure.
So Freya and Hayate are running towards their friends. He's kind of like, I'm gonna fly to protect Valkyrie and you, Freya. Freya's like, well, I'm gonna sing to protect Delta and you. He drops her off. They start singing again. Bogue finds Reyna. And he's so insulted by her, like from the last episode, because she was so impure and she tarnished his wings that he's out to kill her. After that scene, it's funny and then it just gets really like I feel like I just dropped acid right before this sequence. It just gets super weird. But yeah, let's talk about Bogue first and his obsession with Walkie.
Well, this is something we talked about in the previous episode, right? Is that like,
Yeah,
Bogue is a closet Valkyrie fan. I mean, obviously he's extremely torn because as like, a member of the Aerial Knights, you can't be a fan of Valkyrie. They're the enemy. And it's
traitorous.
clear that he is. And like he's also either the biggest fan of Reyna in particular, or he's actually sexually attracted to Reyna as well, right? So there's that element to it. So it's just, yeah, it's funny to see it play out because he gets so worked up over it because it's such an intolerable situation to him. He's used to being the guy who can just like run in, guns blazing and just do his thing and have fun doing it, right? And this whole
Yeah,
Valkyrie thing and Reyna in particular, it's just messing everything up, for the poor guy. He's like, no, he says, I know who I am. I'm an aerial knight. I get to destroy you all, you know? And then it's just like, but I like Valkyrie's music and I'm in love with Reyna and stuff. So yeah, I think maybe not in love, but yeah, maybe in lust.
I like the short green haired one.
Yeah. He's got a thing for her for sure. And so yeah, as soon as he appears on the scene, it's like, "Yeah, I found you." And then he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you impure woman," which is hilarious putting all of this on Reina when it's like,
Yeah.
the impure one is him. He's the one that's having all these thoughts about her.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could really feel like he hasn't thought about anything since,
No,
right?
no. It's just it's obsessive, right? Poor Bogue is in love and doesn't even know it.
Yeah, so he shoots right at Reina, and Machina jumps to save her.
Yeah.
So Freya and Hayate start to resonate like really strong. And then Heinz starts to sing. It was like his turn. It really becomes kind of like a push and pull between the Valkyrie and Heinz's singing. When Heinz sings, the knights ride his wind, and you know that resonance that Hayate gets from Freya, like it appears on the knights except for Keith. Like they show them flying naked, that scene where they feel like they're unencumbered by anything and they're flying in the wind. But also, like it was so strong that Costume starts to get the icy scars on him. Is Costume on the Deadpool, man? What's going on there?
I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, I was kind of confused by that one as well. Like I'm not really sure. That seems like a pretty disastrous effect. Like
Yeah.
that whole thing is just like, "Oh my god, is the Windsinger's song in conjunction with the Protoculture ruins causing like the premature deterioration of the Windermerians? Is it just Cosm or is it the other ones as well? Like I don't know."
It seems like Costume is actually on that verge of the age where you start to get those scars. You know what I mean? Like he's a lot older than the younger ones. I think he's in his 20s, and Herman is already like way past his 30s. So maybe like it affects them, but it affects Costume the most because he's actually teetering on that age. That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know, but they showed his kid on the scene before, and that's classic "tell my wife I love her" thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's true, yeah.
So I don't know, man. I really like Costume. I liked him before, and I kind of like him more now in this episode. I think it's pretty awesome. And then
Well,
they
anime does have a bad reputation for concentrating on a heretofore like pretty minor character and giving them a lot of development just before they're about to whack them. So maybe your theory is correct. Maybe unfortunately poor Cosm is being set up like a lamb to the slaughter.
I'm thinking that, and
It's
kind of don't
bothering you.
want it to happen.
It's like
Yeah,
no.
I don't need another Giraffe Blues moment. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's doesn't look good for Costume, and it wasn't looking good for Hayate either, who starts to show the signs of the VAR when Freya just goes crazy eyed.
Freya kind of losing her mind was also pretty scary. Seems to be another hindrance to the pursuit of the Hayate Freya ship. Not only did Hayate's dad blow up her planet, and now this, where she takes control of Hayate and doesn't really have any sort of control of herself, apparently, if it goes too far, and she activates the VAR syndrome within him. So that's really intense, and that was actually kind of scary. And we saw a lot of the same, I guess, fight choreography that Frey and Hayate had the first time that Hayate fought with Keith, except this time Hayate's not in control of it, which I thought was really interesting, but also like really scary. There's a lot of scary parts in this episode, okay? Like if you really think about it, not being in control of yourself is really scary.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I was just like, "Yeah, what is that all about?"
Reminded me of the Simpsons episodes where Homer's on drugs or something, where his iris gets small but his pupils get really big. That's what
That's quite the analogy.
they're just like so out of it that they continue singing, but it's causing all kinds of trouble.
But by the way, you mentioned that you said that Keith wasn't riding the wind. I think he was. Like he was riding his own wind. It was just different from Hayate's. Right? They show the glow coming from his
Yeah, yeah, he
Draken while
was
he's flying. So he's using the wind to fly during Heinz's song as well.
he was riding the wind on a normal level, like that he always does.
Yes.
But when Heinz starts singing and everybody like got naked, Keith wasn't on that picture with them, on that frame.
Yes, he wasn't included in that group. But
Yeah, he was
yes.
still flying like normal, and he was fighting Hayate, and everybody else just seemed like they got caught up, which is weird. Like you said, he's separated from them somehow. What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of
Yeah,
that.
it's a lot of I don't know in this
It
episode.
is, yeah. This episode like has like a lot of questions because it's a lot of visual storytelling without us actually knowing exactly like being told what's happening. They've got to use that to a certain extent, right? I mean, because this is Valkyrie testing out the protoculture ruins, trying to get data from it, right? They're trying to figure out what to do, and so obviously the answers will not be forthcoming right away. It's something that will have to be figured out both in universe by the characters and also outside of the show. It's like something that the writers only wish to give to us, the audience, over a certain period of time. So yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what's happening there with the wind, but it's clear that there's some sort of effect from Valkyrie. It does do the disruption against Heinz, and Freya and Hayate seem to have reached a new level of synchronization.
Like an overload.
It seems that way, yes. Like it seems almost to the detriment of Hayate in some respects. Like you said,
And Freya.
and Freya, yeah, to a
She
certain
went
degree.
like
Like
zombie
she kind
mode.
of like yeah, she kind of goes like all zombie like, right? Almost like the two of them are like almost like merging into one being or something.
Yeah.
Like they kind of reach this synchronization that's so intense. It's something that's not good for either of them. It's too much. And when it happens, I remember that Keith specifically said the wind's turning against us. It's kind of hard to make out because there's so much happening in this episode, this particular part, right? Like at the same time, like you have Mikumo singing and doing her effect on the protoculture ruins, and then you have
Yeah.
Freya who is synchronizing on an unprecedented level with Hayate. So you're not really sure, is it Heinz that's affecting the wind? Is it the disruption of his song? Is it Mikumo who's turning the wind against them, like meaning Keith and the Aerial Knights? Is it Hayate and Freya who are, synchronizing to such a degree that they're like turning the wind against the Aerial Knights and Keith? Like it's not clear because there's too much going on. I can't
Yeah.
exactly tell like which one is, which mystical effect is affecting the other, right? There's too much of it happening all at once.
Their saying was so strong that it causes this
Megafold gates detected around the structure.
you know what, they look like pineapple slices that appear around the structure, and they're just I was like, oh, those pineapple slices, that's not good.
Yes, because those pineapple like shaped things, those are what like the fold gates look like when when a ship defolds or folds in.
It also looks like the circles that they measure the resonance, like Freya's and
On their display
Hayate's.
screens, yeah, it kind of looks like
Yeah.
the same thing. Yeah, it looks like those. Yeah, and then of course again, this is where we see Royd like just like grinning.
Yeah, he's
Like
loving this.
biofold wave resonance rates are still rising, and there's this one sequence where Reyna says the structure's going out of control. Royd is just sitting there the entire time, this half
Yeah.
grin on his face, as if he's like, "Yes, yes, show me more, show me more."
Yeah, he's like gathering data
Yeah,
like
he's like,
crazy.
yeah, he's getting into the whole thing.
He needed his
And then you
data
say,
gathering
as you
glasses.
say, him and those damn glass. Yeah,
Yeah.
he needed his like
I'm
scientific.
surprised he manages to keep the same pair on the
I
whole
was
episode.
surprised too. I half expected him to pull out like his, his scientific discovery success glasses, in
Yeah, yeah.
brass instead of
Like one of them is a
yeah,
microscope.
in brass or copper or something color instead of gold or silver, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I was half expecting that.
And then Mikumo has this flashback of her being on a lab table, but it's kind of like a tub because she was in water, and then there's this scientists around her,
Yeah, it's like it's a very typical sort of scientist experimenting on an individual sort of moment, right?
like Weapon X.
Yes. She's having some flashback to some sort of group test or something. There's people looking at her and like, you know, inquisitively monitoring her and everything. So yeah, there's something going on there.
Mikumo has flashbacks of like waking up on an operating table and like finally remembers who she is and what her purpose is. And I mean, it answered some questions, but really it's just raised more. Like, what is she actually is supposed to be doing? What kind of creature is she? I'm thinking that she's actually protoculture. Like, this might be the first time that we're actually seeing a real life representation of the protoculture. That sounds really dumb because this is a cartoon and it's not real life. But actually seeing like the protoculture in the show and not just something that's like talked about, like kind of as an overarching, like, yes, this thing exists.
Do you think she's horticulture or some sort of science experiment? What's your take on this whole lab table thing?
Insufficient information. I have no idea what to think
Not
at this
enough
point. Yeah,
data.
not enough data to to figure out what's going on. As Ash from Aliens would say, I'm still collating.
Yeah, but it is very curious, the whole thing about Mikumo. Well, of course it's gonna be curious. It's fucking the mysterious Venus.
Yes, the mysterious Venus, and we're finally learning new parts about her. Her whole thing there. So yeah.
Freya overloads Hayate, and then Kanami had to like knock her down. And then Mikumo's singing by herself, and she falls. And then that's the exact same time that Hayate hits the ground. That's pretty much it. It was a pretty abrupt end to the episode.
There was that one thing. It's that thing where they say the saying. What is it again? I can't remember now. But Mikumo utters it.
Yeah, when she was falling, she says,
Yeah, Rundanjal Ram Mayan, which means in the name of the king.
"Hey, where did you find that out?"
Somebody sent it to me. I think it was either on Facebook or something else. Somebody sent that thing to me. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it to you guys before.
Holding out, man. Come on.
No, no.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think if I'm remembering correctly, Cecilia also came to that conclusion at the same time or something, independently of my own discovery of that. But yeah,
Was there a show where I wasn't involved?
no. It might have been a discussion we had outside of the show, but we did
Oh,
have the
maybe.
discussion for sure.
But cool. So that's what it means, and
Well, that's what I've been told. I don't know if that's actually what it means, but I don't know if there's anything to it, but we'll see.
there's no post-credit scene for this episode. But there was a new song by Juna, sung by Mikumo and Celia. What did you think of the song? Oh man, she's not here. Shoot. What's going on?
That's cold, man. That's cold.
We'll find out what Sia thinks of the song next week. Hopefully, she could join us from. I think she's going to be in Tokyo by the time we talk about the episode next week. There's going to be a delay on the subs
Oh, is that what they're
on
saying?
BG's website because he's going to be on a trip. So let's go into the messages. All right, from Yufan Kun on YouTube. With regards to dropping the bomb, I think there's a detail that gets overlooked that puts the gravity of what happened into perspective. According to Mirage in episode 7, several million civilians died as a result of dropping the bomb, which is way beyond quote unquote some collateral damage. If those numbers are to be trusted, it really puts into question whether we can discuss if Wright did what he did for the right reasons. As you pointed out, most probably think that he had been under the influence of some sort of VAR control or other form of coercion because they seem to try to portray him as sympathetic towards the end of the episode, something that is pretty much impossible to do if he willingly bombed millions of people.
That's actually really good take on it. I've never considered that to this point, and I think yeah, that is something that's kind of overlooked. It does sort of make sense because he's right in the context of the story. They are trying to make like Wright Immelman out to be some sort of tragic figure or something, whereas like we're looking at what he did, and it's just like it's brutal. Like not only was it like a betrayal of the new UN Spacey, but it also managed to kill a bunch of Windermerians as well. What are we supposed to believe here at this point? Yeah, that's good. I'll have to put some more thought into that. I like that theory a lot.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Yufan Kun. Alexius de las Alas. Point on the lifespans, Zentrans live way longer than humans. Even the Centrati human hybrids live half that. Look at Johnson. He looks to be a brutish 40, 50-year-old. I think somebody answered that also. He is like 45 years old as a Centron. But in actuality, he is more than 100 years. Milia Genius 2 and Britai. Exodol is the eldest, I think.
I honestly don't think that there's anything official to back up that sort of speculation, other than if they're right, if Johnson's age really is 100, but he's only showing like the age of like a 40-year-old guy, then yeah, I guess that's something. But I didn't think that Zentrans had any special like long-lived lifespans other than humans because they're supposed to be almost identical to humans in every respect. In fact, their Zentradi traits, they said, only really come out when they become when they grow to giant size. They say that the mycloning process, when it's reverted and they become giant size, then their genetic difference, the few genetic differences they have with humans, then become very apparent.
Yeah, like what's her name from Frontier?
Clang, yeah. But it's just, yeah, it's just I don't remember them. I don't remember them saying anything about that. The only Zentran that was really long lived was Bedolza.
He
Um,
was huge.
he was like literally taken apart, right? Like he was
Hmm.
part of the actual like mobile fortress, that was keeping him alive. So I guess, yeah, as part of that, then yeah, he was a very very long lived. But as far as anybody else, no. Kawamori actually already also commented on the fact that he got called out for the fact that both Max and Milia in Macross 7 look incredibly young for their age, and Max is like human. He's not
Hmm.
Zentran at all. You know,
Yeah.
Kawamori sort of like gave the fans like a tongue-in-cheek sort of answer. He says, "Well, they are ace pilots, and after all, Max is a genius." That sort of thing, right? So yeah, I'm not really sure what that means. What's that
He's
supposed to
so
mean? But
mysterious.
it's clearly like, he's clearly trolling at that point. So he's like, I think the whole point of that response is to be, yes, we know it doesn't exactly work, but we don't care. We wanted to have those characters in the show anyway. And to be honest, like space travel is such that like these people like could have traveled like relativistic travel, because we know that they don't always 90% of the time the colony fleets are not traveling in fold space. They only jump every once in a while, right? They only fold space
Mhm.
every once in a while to go from one area of the galaxy to another. More often than not, 90% of the time, they're all traveling through space at relativistic speeds.
All right, so let's move on to Felipe Centron. This is a follow up to last week. He was the one that was talking about maybe it was Hayate's dad, right, Imaman, that gave Freya the music device. And I couldn't remember who it was. I was thinking it was him, but I didn't want to say it. But yeah, I just wanted to confirm that he came up with that theory. And it'd be pretty interesting if that's true. Yeah, we'll find out, I guess. Or maybe we won't. Maybe that's not even a thing that we're going to be concerned with.
It might be. It is a rather prominent plot point
Yeah.
for Freya's backstory, so it might come up in the future. It has been mentioned, like it was shown to us at the beginning of the Macross Delta series, and then
Hmm.
we revisited it later when it was told in more explicit details about what it was and what it meant to her and how it changed her life, right? So it's very possible that it might come up again. That's not a bad theory.
Well, Celia said last week that it might be a way to rebond Hayate and Freya after they kind of get separated because of the fact that it was his dad that bombed the Windermerians. But I don't think they had a problem bonding. After this episode, it looked like they bonded too much.
Yeah.
So, all right, one more. Ricky Honda. My theory is that the cure vaccine live songs are like real vaccines. Put a little of the thing inside a person for them to get immunity. But in this case, I think it would be to control the fold bacteria. But in Hayate's case, I think he syncs and resonates with Freya so much that instead of her song and his fold receptors preventing VAR, it catalyzed it and caused him to get VAR. So this is about this episode that we get a message from Ricky Honda. What do you think about that whole theory?
That's interesting. Yeah, it's certainly as good a theory as any other. Because
Yeah.
I don't really have one as yet for like why all that was happening. But yeah, it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
We're getting a lot of great thoughts
Yeah, I
about these
think I think
episodes, right?
this is definitely something that could be the case. Absolutely. Yeah.
We don't have an answer to that one, but it seems like something that is very possible, plausible, and we'll see.
Yeah, hold
I'd
on to
accept
it
it.
because it's let's see how it plans out. Sorry, how it pans out. Just hold on to that theory and go with it, and we'll see.
Cool stuff, man. We have a very intelligent audience. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Next episode is Eternal Songs, and that's all for the messages. You got anything else, Chad?
No, I guess I'll just go into where people can find me, which is you can always email me at marchingcw@hotmail.com. You can, of course, visit my website, the Macross Mecha Manual. You can contact me and get more information about the Macross Mecha Manual through my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Macross Mecha Manual. And lastly, you can find me posting on various anime message boards, such as Anime Nation, ANN, and of course, Macross World Forums.
And this is EXO. You could find me on the Macross World Facebook page or the Macross Delta Facebook page, or you could tweet at me at Macross Tweet, the official Macross World Twitter account. And see you next week.
And hopefully be able to catch the next episode of Macross Delta, episode 19, on TV in Tokyo, because I will actually be in Tokyo on the 8th, and hopefully our hotel room has access to Tokyo MX channel, because that's the channel that it airs on at 10:30 at night. And I think that's about it. So I will hopefully join the show next week, if not, probably when I get back to the States. So yeah, I think that's it.
Bye.